Pour Your Heart Into It, How Starbucks Built a Company One Cup at a Time by Howard Schultz and Dory Jones Yang. Picture this. You're 7 years old, caught up in an epic snowball fight on a freezing January day in 1961. Your cheeks are red, your fingers are numb, and life couldn't be better. Then you spot your mom frantically waving from your 7th-floor apartment window, and your stomach drops. You bolt home, taking those 7 flights of stairs 2 at a time, your heart hammering in your chest. Your mom's waiting at the door, with news that will change everything. Dad had an accident. I have to go to the hospital. Your father, Fred Schultz, a truck driver, had shattered his ankle at work. For the next month he sat at home, with his leg in a cast, completely unable to work. And here's the gut punch. No work meant no paycheck. 0 income, no health insurance, no safety net, nothing. The silence at the dinner table became unbearable as your parents argued about bills night after night. When the phone rang, you became the family's tiny shield, lying to bill collectors about whether your parents were home. And the image that scarred you forever was watching your dad, this strong, hard-working man who never complained, slumped on the couch like a deflated balloon, beaten down by a system that treated him like he was replaceable. That 7-year-old kid was Howard Schultz, and that brutal memory, it became the secret DNA of every single Starbucks coffee shop. Today, we're unpacking his remarkable journey from his book, Pour Your Heart Into It. This isn't your typical business book about maximizing profits and crushing competitors. It's a blueprint for building a company that actually has a soul, proof that you can treat people with genuine respect and still build something extraordinary. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how a simple vacation to Italy sparked a vision that transformed American coffee culture forever, how Howard got rejected by investors more than 200 times but kept pushing forward anyway, and most importantly, how he built an empire on one unshakable promise: to create the kind of workplace his father never got to experience. This is about passion, persistence, and the revolutionary idea that business isn't really about money at all, it's about people. Howard Schultz's childhood in the Brooklyn projects was about as far from a cozy Starbucks cafe as you can imagine. His father bounced between brutal, soul-crushing jobs as a factory worker, truck driver, and cab driver, never breaking $20,000 a year. He was honest and worked himself to the bone, but as Howard remembers it, he was a broken man. The system had chewed him up and spit him out. This left a permanent mark on Howard's heart. He made himself a promise. If he ever had the power to make a difference, he'd never let people feel that way. He'd build something completely different. But the path wasn't obvious. After college, he climbed the corporate ladder, first at Xerox, then at a Swedish housewares company called Hammerplast. By his late 20s, he had everything the American dream promised: fat paycheck, Manhattan apartment, bright future ahead. Most people would have called it a day. But Howard felt restless, like he was living someone else's life. Then something odd caught his attention. A tiny retailer in Seattle with just 4 stores was ordering a bizarre number of his company's coffee makers. The company's name? Starbucks Coffee, Tea, and Spice. Intrigued, Howard booked a flight to Seattle to investigate. He arrived on a gorgeous spring day in 1981. The moment he walked into the original Starbucks at Pike Place Market, the aroma hit him like a wave. This wasn't the bitter, stale stuff his parents drank from a can. This place was a shrine to coffee itself. Behind a weathered wooden counter sat bins filled with exotic beans from places like Sumatra, Kenya, and Ethiopia. The guy behind the counter scooped some Sumatra beans like they were precious stones, ground them fresh, and brewed Howard a cup. He took that first sip, and his world tilted on its axis. The coffee was richer, bolder, more alive than anything he'd ever tasted. By the 3rd sip, he was completely hooked. He felt like Columbus discovering a new world. He met the founders, Gerald Baldwin and Gordon Bowker, these brilliant, passionate guys who were obsessed with one thing: quality coffee. They weren't dreaming about empire building. They just loved coffee and wanted to share the absolute best with Seattle. They were purists, who roasted their beans dark in the European style to unlock their full flavor. To them, coffee wasn't just a product. It was an art form. Howard was mesmerized. He didn't just see a small Seattle shop. He saw what Starbucks could become. He knew in his bones he had to be part of this. He called his future wife Cherie and told her, "I know where I want to live. Seattle, Washington." He'd found his calling. But convincing the founders to hire him was like pulling teeth. It took an entire year. They were suspicious of this ambitious New Yorker with his big, flashy ideas. During one crucial dinner meeting in San Francisco, Howard passionately painted his vision of a national company with hundreds of stores, spreading the love of great coffee across America. He thought he'd won them over. Instead, he'd freaked them out. They worried about growing too fast and losing what made Starbucks special. The next day, Jerry called to say thanks, but no thanks. Howard was crushed, but he didn't fold. He called Jerry right back. "You're making a huge mistake," he said, his voice trembling with conviction. He didn't just argue for himself. He argued for Starbucks' destiny, urging Jerry to be brave enough to chase the vision they both knew was possible. The next morning, Jerry called back. "You were right. The job is yours." Howard took a massive pay cut but got a small slice of equity. He owned a tiny piece of Starbucks' future. He and Cherie packed everything they owned and drove 3,000 miles across the country to start over. Howard threw himself into the work, manning the counter, learning to roast coffee, soaking up everything the founders knew. He felt like he'd been chosen for something important. Then, in 1983, a business trip flipped everything upside down again. The company sent him to Milan for a houseware show. Walking around Milan, he discovered the electric world of Italian espresso bars. There were 500 of them in Milan alone, practically on every corner, and they were always packed. But these weren't just coffee shops. They were extensions of people's homes, community gathering spots where life happened. The barista wasn't just some worker. He was a performer, moving with grace, chatting warmly with customers. It was theater. It was romance. It was connection. And right there, Howard had his lightning bolt moment. Starbucks had completely missed the point. They were selling beans like produce, sending customers home with bags. They'd missed the magic of the experience itself. The real connection happened in the coffee bar. He flew back to Seattle with his mind racing, convinced he had to bring the Italian coffee bar experience to America. This was Starbucks' destiny. But his bosses didn't buy it. They were coffee purists. To them, Starbucks was a retailer, not a restaurant or bar. Serving drinks would muddy their mission. They shut him down. For months, Howard was depressed and torn. He believed in his vision with every fiber of his being, but he also felt loyal to the company he loved. Finally, after nearly a year of lobbying, Jerry Baldwin agreed to let him test it in a small corner of a new downtown Seattle store. The moment it opened in April 1984, the espresso bar exploded. Lines stretched out the door. The tiny space was jammed with customers who couldn't get enough of the drinks, especially one most Americans had never heard of, the cafe latte. The store became a magnet, buzzing with energy. The test was a home run. The customers had voted with their feet. Surely now the founders would see the potential. But they didn't. Jerry Baldwin actually felt the espresso bar's success was a problem. It was changing the company's identity. "We're coffee roasters," he told Howard. "I don't want to be in the restaurant business." Despite the overwhelming proof, he refused to expand the concept. Howard faced a crossroads. He could accept their decision and watch his dream die, or he could take the biggest gamble of his life. He went all in. In 1985, Howard Schultz walked away from Starbucks to start his own company. Right as he made this terrifying decision, he found out Cherie was pregnant. He was leaving a secure job to chase a dream with zero guarantees and a baby on the way. He called his new company Il Giornale, Italian for The Daily. He needed to raise $1.7 million to launch. The fundraising crushed his soul. He pitched 242 potential investors. 217 of them said no. People told him he was delusional. Americans will never pay $1.50 for a cup of coffee. But Howard refused to quit. He was powered by a bone-deep belief in his vision. One of his first investors was a doctor named Ron Margolis, who didn't even drink coffee. He didn't ask for a business plan or financial projections. He just listened to Howard speak with such raw passion and honesty that he wrote a check for $100,000 on the spot. He invested in Howard, not the numbers. That $100,000 eventually grew to more than $10 million. After a brutal year, Howard finally scraped together the money. He opened the first Il Journal in 1986, and it was an instant hit, serving over 1,000 customers daily within 6 months. He opened 2 more stores, including one in Vancouver, proving his concept could travel. Then, in 1987, fate dealt him the hand that would define his entire career. Jerry Baldwin and Gordon Bowker, the original Starbucks founders, decided to sell. They wanted to focus on their other businesses. They were selling the 6 Starbucks stores, the roasting plant, and most importantly, the Starbucks name. Howard knew, with absolute certainty, that he had to buy it. This was his destiny calling. But there was a massive problem. He needed nearly $4 million, and he'd just spent a year begging for money. Worse, one of his own major investors tried to hijack the deal, cooking up a plan that would have shoved Howard aside and left him with a meaningless role in the company he was fighting to build. In a tense confrontation, the investor threatened him. "If you don't take this deal, you'll never work in this town again. You'll be dog meat." Howard was horrified, but he stood his ground. "This is my idea," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I brought it to you, and you're not taking it away." He walked out of that meeting and broke down crying. He thought his dream was dead. But he'd stood up for his values. He refused to let someone steal his vision. He assembled his own plan, one that was fair to all his early backers, and within weeks, he'd raised the $3.8 million. In August 1987, Starbucks was his. The student had bought the teacher. His first act as CEO wasn't crunching numbers. He gathered all the employees on the roasting plant floor. Morale was in the gutter. People felt abandoned and scared. Howard spoke from his heart. "I'm here today because I love this company," he told them. He shared his bold dream of building a national company whose values everyone could be proud of. Then he made the promise that was forged in his childhood home all those years ago. "I promise you I will not let you down. I promise you I will not leave anyone behind." He knew that to build the company he dreamed of, he had to create a radically different relationship between management and employees, one built on trust and genuine respect. This philosophy faced its first real test in 1988, shortly after his own father died. Remembering his dad's lack of health insurance, Howard made a bold move. He proposed that Starbucks offer comprehensive health care to every single employee, including part-timers working as little as 20 hours a week. This was revolutionary. Other companies were slashing benefits. The board was skeptical. How could a struggling, money-losing company afford such a generous expense? But Howard argued passionately that it wasn't an expense. It was an investment in people. "Treat people like family," he said, "and they'll be loyal and give everything they've got." The board approved. It turned out to be one of their smartest decisions ever. Starbucks' employee turnover dropped to less than half the industry average, saving millions in recruiting and training costs. More importantly, it created a culture of loyalty and trust that became their secret weapon. But he wasn't done. He wanted every employee to feel like a genuine owner. In 1991, he launched Beanstalk, a stock option plan that made everyone, from executives to part-time baristas, a partner in the company. From that day forward, Starbucks stopped using the word employee. Everyone became a partner. As the company exploded, opening hundreds of stores, they faced a new challenge: how to scale without becoming a soulless, cookie-cutter chain. The answer was a delicate dance between sticking to their core values and staying flexible enough to listen to customers. One of their biggest internal battles was over something that seems silly now: non-fat milk. Howard and the coffee purists were dead against it. To them, it destroyed the authentic taste of a latte. "We will never offer non-fat milk," Howard famously declared. "It's not who we are." But a new executive, Howard Behar, kept waving customer comment cards in his face. "Our customers want non-fat milk," he insisted. "We should give it to them." One day, Howard Schultz sat in one of his own stores and watched a frustrated customer walk out after being told they didn't have non-fat milk. He realized Behar was right. The customer was right. They tested it, and today, nearly half of all lattes and cappuccinos are made with non-fat milk. They learned they could honor customer requests without sacrificing their commitment to quality coffee. This spirit of listening to the front lines led to one of their biggest wins, the Frappuccino. The idea didn't come from headquarters. It came from store managers in Southern California who watched customers flock to competitors for blended, cold coffee drinks. Initially, Howard hated it. It seemed like a milkshake, not serious coffee. But the partners on the ground wouldn't give up. They experimented, perfected the recipe, and proved there was massive demand. The Frappuccino became a phenomenon, generating millions in sales and bringing a completely new customer into their stores. It was a powerful lesson. Don't let the founder's ego block the company's evolution. Howard Schultz's story is a masterclass in building something that lasts. He built the Starbucks brand not through flashy advertising, but one person at a time, one cup at a time. He created a third place, a comfortable, welcoming space between work and home where people could connect and recharge. He understood he wasn't just selling coffee. He was selling an experience. And at the heart of that experience was always the memory of his father. He built the company he wished his dad had been lucky enough to work for, a place that offered not just a paycheck, but respect, dignity, health benefits, and a piece of the dream. When you finish a book like Pour Your Heart Into It, something shifts inside you. It's not just the incredible business success story that grabs you, but the why behind everything. So often in business we hear about strategy, market dominance, and profit margins. And yes, all that stuff is in this book. But the real lesson, the one that makes this story unforgettable, is the power of a deeply human purpose. Howard Schultz didn't just want to sell coffee. He wanted to build a company that would have made his father proud, that would have given his dad the dignity he deserved. That one simple, powerful idea became the compass for everything that followed. It's why he fought for healthcare when everyone said it was crazy. It's why he shared ownership with every single person, calling them partners instead of employees. It's why he obsessed over creating stores that felt like community spaces where people mattered. This is a profound lesson for anyone who wants to build something meaningful. Your why matters infinitely more than your what. Your reason for doing something becomes the fuel that pushes you through the brutal times, the 217 rejections, the market crashes, the moments when you doubt everything. When your work connects to something deeply personal, something that comes from your heart, it stops being just a job. It becomes a mission. And that leads to some practical actions we can all take right now. First, discover your own why. Look at your own life, your own experiences, even the painful ones. Is there a problem you desperately want to solve? Is there an injustice that keeps you up at night? Like Howard Schultz, you can transform a painful memory into a powerful purpose. Your why doesn't need to be as grand as building a global empire. It could be as simple as creating a space where everyone feels included, or starting a small project that helps your community. Connect what you do to who you are. Second, practice putting people first in your daily life. Whether you're leading a group project, working a part-time job, or just hanging out with friends and family, pay attention to how you make people feel. Are you building them up? Are you showing genuine respect? Schultz built an empire on the straightforward idea that when you treat people with dignity, they give you their absolute best. You don't need to be a CEO to live this way. You can start today, in every interaction. And finally, be willing to pour your heart into something. The title of the book says it all. Success isn't an accident or a stroke of luck. It comes from unwavering passion and relentless commitment to your vision. It means caring about the smallest details, refusing to compromise on what matters most, and having the courage to keep going when everyone says it's impossible. Find something you believe in, something that lights a fire in you, and give it absolutely everything you've got. That was a summary of Pour Your Heart Into It by Howard Schultz. We've covered the main ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a photograph of a breathtaking landscape. It gives you a glimpse, but it can never replace actually being there. The real power of this book lives in the stories, the details, and the raw emotion of the journey. If any part of this story sparked something inside you, I genuinely encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning business tactics. It's an experience that can truly change how you think about success, leadership, and the power of leading with your heart. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next dive into another transformative book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.